Hey everybody! For those of you who are new to the channel, my name is Douglas and my wife Esperanza and I moved to Baja California Sur to Loreto, Mexico, where we live and have ran a business for the past 2.5 years. I've made several videos about the cost of living in Mexico, from groceries to utilities, and I'm often asked, what about building in Mexico? We built our entire resort and our house, which we live in now, from the ground up. And so I have quite a bit of experience building in Mexico. So in this video, I'm going to lay out all of the costs of the building, the entire process here in Mexico, and I'm going to compare it to building in the US. Right before we left the US, we were in the process of starting to build an ADU, which is an accessory dwelling unit or a casita on our property in California. And we went through the entire process of getting started, getting bids, and we're just about ready to get started when we decided to scrap that and leave and move to Mexico. So I have a very good reference of a similar build in San Diego County in Southern California, which is almost the same size, was very similar floor plan. Everything was very, very close. So I can compare apples to apples and let you know what it was going to cost us to build this unit in Southern California and what it cost us to build here in Mexico. Today I'm coming to you from inside our shop. I've got our patio in the background with our moke parked under it, and that's because it's definitely a little windy today. In the winter here, it can tend to get windy on and off, and I wouldn't be able to get very good audio outside. Also, I've got on a sweatshirt. You might think it's really cold here. It's actually probably like 75 degrees. I think the highest today is supposed to be 79. For me, that is cold. After you've been here for a couple summers, 79 degrees is not very warm. So you'll see everybody in Loreto in the winter that is locals, are locals and stay here year round, bundled up. You'll see a lot of puffy coats. People probably are wearing gloves if you went out right now today, and everything else, because in the 70s is freezing cold here. Also, I've got a little bit of a sniffle. I had a cold and I'm getting over it, so I apologize for that. If there's any sniffling in the video, I'll try to keep it to a minimum. Before we left the United States, we were going to build an ADU, accessory dwelling unit. I'll call it a casita so we can kind of compare it to Mexico. But basically a standalone building on our property that we could rent out. And that unit was going to be about the same size as our villas we built in our mini resort that we have, Pufferfish Villas. So it makes a really good comparison to building in both places. So in California, we were going to build a different construction style than we would here in Mexico. And that's just because that is the common building style in both places. So in Southern California, it's a slab foundation with a wood-framed house, wood-frame roof. And then we were going to do a metal roof on top of that, which is fairly common and a good choice where you're in a fire area. Down here, we did a concrete slab foundation with reinforced concrete block construction walls and a concrete roof. It is a very durable building style, especially where we get hurricanes here. You've got a complete concrete house. It's not going to get damaged by a hurricane. Well, windows and doors, but the house isn't going to be structurally damaged by any hurricane or anything like that. Also, which I found surprising, is that steel reinforced concrete construction is the most durable during an earthquake. We do get earthquakes here because the San Andreas Fault continues down and runs all the way down the middle of the Gulf of California. So Loreto does get earthquakes from time to time, just like we did in the San Diego area. This is a very, very stable building style to do in earthquake-prone areas. So that's good too. So I'm going to compare these to each other because Concrete block is the least expensive building style here in Mexico, and wood frame construction is the least expensive building style in Southern California. Let's talk about the process of building in both places. It's similar, but there is a lot more to do in the US. In the US, you'd start by designing a floor plan. Then I'd give that floor plan to our architect, have the architect create a set of plans that the city is requiring for that building. Then we have to get quotes on, the foundation and all these different things that are going to be quoted out to contractors. And then there's a bunch of studies that have to be done. I've got a list here because it's hard for me to remember. So where we were going to build in Vista, California, which is in the San Diego area, we needed a soils report, a fire safety report, an energy compliance report, and a structural engineering report, along with a fire sprinkler plan. So all of those are reports that you have to pay for, have a professional that has a license, do these reports, and stamp them with their license and provide them for your building permit. Then you applied for building permits and wait till the building permits are completed. Then you can start construction on the house. In the US, there are a lot of inspections as you go along. Every step of construction on the building, you have an inspection, and it gets approved or denied. Things have to be fixed, and then you go to the next step until everything is completed. Then you get your final inspection and you can move in. In Mexico, it is similar, but much simpler. You start out the same way. I start out with a floor plan, give to the architect. The architect creates a set of plans that the building permit agency here in Mexico is looking for. Then we don't have to do any of those compliance reports here. Now, there are some areas outside of town. If you're close enough to the water or in specific areas, you might have to do some type of ecological report or a soils report, but that wasn't required for us where we are here very close into town. So you basically take your set of plans, you take them in to get a building permit, and unlike in the US where you submit your plans for your permit and you wait, it was 3 to 6 months to get the plans approved. Here, they allow you to start building as soon as you turn in the plans, before they're even approved. They say, go ahead and start building and then we'll approve the plans. Usually takes about a week to 2 weeks here to approve the plans. You get back your building permit, you put it out in front of your building. Here you can get started a lot quicker, where in the US you have to wait until the plans are fully approved before you can get started. Then same process here, that you build, but there are no inspections. The city does not do any inspections of your property here when you're building. And in reality, you can build whatever you want. What's on those plans has nothing to do. That's just the record of what the city has, is what you intended to build. In the process here, you do not have a city inspector that is coming out and making sure everything is built correctly. Now, in theory, your architect is supposed to be responsible for checking the construction and making sure that everything is built correctly as per the plan that the architect created. And a lot of times here, your architect is your builder. They're one and the same. But depending on how good of a builder you have, that might not actually happen. We had a really good builder and a really good architect, and even with that, there were many, many things that would not have gotten done the way that we wanted them done and to the quality level that we had them done with just that process. So if you are familiar with construction, you know how things should be done, you know the codes, and you are going to be on site the entire time of the build, then you can act as that inspector to make sure everything gets done right. And that's what we did. If you aren't going to be here, or you don't have a lot of experience with that, You can either trust your architect and builder to be able to do that, or you may want to hire a third party to just come in and inspect the property at the stages of construction to make sure you're getting a quality build and everything is done correctly. So another question we get a lot is, can you even build in Mexico if you're not a Mexican citizen? The answer is yes, you can. Foreigners can come here and they can build on property here, and there are no exclusions or anything to a foreigner building in Mexico as long as you have a piece of property that you can build on. So now that we've gone over the process in both the US and Mexico, and you see that they're pretty similar, Mexico is a little bit simpler with a few less steps. Let's go over the costs involved in building in the US and Mexico. Now, as I said, we were going to build in the US. This was in 2021 that we were getting ready to build. So all of these costs are from 2021. I'm sure they're higher now. I don't really have any way to figure out a lot of these costs, what they would be today. So I'm going to give you the 2021 costs, and you can just assume that this is a lowball quote for building there, because I'm sure it's a lot more now. So we were living in Vista, California, which is in San Diego County in Southern California. That is a very expensive place to build. Materials costs are a little bit higher, and a lot of the permit fees and all that stuff are high. That's what I have for comparison. You know, if you live in the Midwest or somewhere else, you might have lower costs. You might also have lower fees and permits and all that thing. So it's going to vary wherever you are. Also in Mexico, I'm sure the fees are varied depending on where you are in different areas of Mexico. So let's dive in now to the cost of building in the US and Mexico. I have my little piece of paper here so I can get all of these correct. Now, as I said, we were well into the process of doing this, so we had already investigated all of these costs, and so that's why I have a very accurate idea of what it was going to cost to build this building. So both buildings were going to be about 550 square feet, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, and a full kitchen and living area. I've got the plans here for the ADU that you can see that it was going to be a longer and narrower floor plan. And then here's the plans for our villas that we built here in Mexico. And they are a little bit different shape, but the exact same square footage pretty much, and they have all of the same amenities. Both of these buildings were going to be finished very similarly with the same level of finishes. Like, we're going to do quartz countertops, and we did quartz countertops down here. We were going to do nice tile floors there, and we did those here. So everything is very comparable in these estimates for the US build, and then the Mexico build, I know what it costs because we built it. And I apologize if there's some noise in the background. The tortilla sellers are going around. They drive around in their cars with a big speaker on top advertising tortillas, and then they usually have a cooler with warm corn and flour tortillas in it. And tortillas are very popular here, so you know, you usually have 4 or 5 different vendors going around town all day long selling tortillas, and I think they make a pretty good business out of it. And somebody now is driving around playing Christmas music in Spanish. It's almost Christmas. It's the beginning of December, so I don't know if you can hear that. It's like the Mexican Brenda Lee singing Rock Around the Christmas Tree in Spanish. Anyways, makes a good background music. Okay, so building permits and fees. So this is all your building permits, all your impact fees. So in the US, you're going to have school impact fees and road impact fees. So in the US, all the building permits and fees to build the ADU that we were going to build are $35,000. And this is one of the problems with Southern California specifically, is that the fees and permits are expensive. To build a full size, like 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house in many places in Southern California are going to cost you over $200,000 in fees and permits. Before you ever break ground, ever buy one material, you're going to pay $200,000, $230,000, $250,000 in permits and fees. In Mexico, $82 for all the permits and fees for our 550 square foot villa. All right, but that isn't the end in the US. You also need a whole bunch of reports that you have to submit with your plans to get your building permit. You need a soils report, about $3,000. You need a fire safety report. This is to say that your house is going to be built so it's fire resistant during wildfires, because they have big problems with wildfires. $600. You need an energy compliance report. This says your house is going to be net zero. Your house has to be net zero, meaning you have to generate as much energy as you use inside that building in California where we were building. This presents other costs, but this is just your report where you're telling them how you're going to get the net zero on this building. So you're going to use electricity, you're going to use natural gas, you're going to use all that. Now you have to generate that much energy on your property, which is usually through solar, and that's required. You need to pay $1,200 for a report to tell them how you're going to do that. Structural engineering report. Any building over a certain height, you have to have structural engineering on the building. That's about $3,000. You also had to have, in our area, a fire sprinkler plan. You had to put fire sprinklers in the building, and you had to have a report, a plan of how you were going to put fire sprinklers in. That adds even additional costs because fire sprinklers are not cheap, but you have to do it where we were going to build. So those are all the costs. None of those costs exist in the Mexican build. Also, due to the energy compliance requirement of being net zero, you had to do solar, unless you're going to generate energy in some other way. But the only real way to do it is solar. So you had to put enough solar on your building to offset all the energy it uses. And that solar is about $15,000. This is another thing I didn't like about California, because they basically made you put solar on your building, and most of the solar panel array is big enough that you aren't going to use all that energy. So they're making you generate energy and sell it back to the utility for free, because they don't pay you for any excess energy you use. You only get offset for the energy on your property. So once your bill went to zero, they don't pay you. They just get all the rest of the energy you produce for free. So, but they made you do it. So you had to pay $15,000 to put in a solar system. Also, the fire sprinklers are very expensive, several $1,000s to put in a fire sprinkler system, even in a little building like this. That is again required there. So it's an additional cost of $2,000 to $3,000. Man, we still have the car out there. I think this is the official car, like a city vehicle going around playing Christmas music. This is another thing they do in Mexico that is a little bit different. To kind of get the holiday spirit and all that, they go all out in the town we're in. They have incredible Christmas decorations all around town, all the public areas, big events going on all the time. And they have cars that just drive around and play Christmas music. So you're in the Christmas cheery kind of spirit. It's kind of cool. Anyways, let's get back to this building. So once you get all the permits, all the fees, all that stuff, also you're going to have an architect to create a set of plans, unless you're an architect that can do that. In the US, it's way more difficult than here. But even here, it's kind of difficult to get a set of plans exactly like they want it. It's a lot easier to hire an architect because they know exactly what the city wants, just like in the US. So we hired an architect both places. We created the plan, but then we gave it to an architect to create plans for the city. And so an architect in the US was about $3,000 to create the set of plans for that ADU. Here, $150 for the architect. Building costs. So this is where I had to do a little bit of fudging around. So in the US, we were going to just get a slab put down and put in the slab and the foundation. We were going to build everything else ourselves. And this is because I have a lot of experience building stick frame houses, every stage of construction. I can do everything, all the electrical, all the plumbing, all the framing, all that. And so to keep costs down, we were going to do everything except putting in the slab. In fact, we were going to do all the rough electrical, rough plumbing in the slab, everything. We were just going to pay for the concrete work and the foundation. So I didn't have quotes for all of the additional items that we got done here. So here we basically had a shell built, and we had our builder do rough electrical, rough plumbing. That's all the electrical and plumbing that's in the walls and the foundation. We had them do the slab and the foundation. We also had them build all the walls, build the roof on the building to get us to a shell, and then doors and windows. In the US, normally you just buy doors and windows and they come and you have to install them or have somebody install them. Here, installation is really included in the cost of the doors and windows. That's usually how they do it. So the window place comes out and measures and makes custom windows. That's another thing that's different. In the US, you buy standard size windows and then, or you can get custom, but most people buy standard size windows and then you build the frame to fit the standard size windows. Here, they just build the frame. The frame is never like a 3 foot by 3 foot window is never 36 inch by 36 inch opening. It might be 35 by 34. It might be 38 by 36. You never know. So how they do it here is every window is custom window. The window company comes out, measures everything. They build the windows to fit every single opening, and then they come out and install them as part of the cost of building them. So the installation is included with building. I don't know whether you could get them built without the installation cost, but a lot of times here in Mexico, when they have this type of system, if you say, I don't want it installed, I want to do it myself, the cost is the same. Because that actually happened with a window in our hidden bungalow, where I said, just bring me the window, I'll install it myself. It's super easy. I stick framed it so I can do that. And the cost was the same as having them come out and install it. So, it's kind of a thing that's how they do it here. Doors are the same way. They build the doors custom so that they fit the opening, and then they usually come and install them as part of the cost of building them. So I had to take all of our estimates and costs for the US and kind of add in the difference of if we had somebody build the whole shell and do the rough plumbing and rough electrical and that. So I tried to estimate the cost of having somebody do that in the US, build us a frame with a rough electrical and rough plumbing and finish it to that level with doors and windows installed. And then we would come back and do what we did here, which is basically all the finish work inside, all the finished electrical, finished plumbing, everything else. So I tried to make an estimate of that cost. And honestly, I'm sure that I totally underestimated this because building costs of contractors in the US are just crazy expensive. So if anything, this is way, way under what it really would have cost. But I came up with a full cost of $118,000. This is all the building materials and all the labor to get to a finished ADU building in the US. In Mexico, we had this all done, so I know exactly how much it costs, and it was $63,000 to finish that building. So the big, big cost difference, almost double the cost in the US for to get a building into the same level with the same amount of work done by us. So with us doing the same amount of work in both places. So now, what's the final summary, the final cost difference? In the US, to build a 550 square foot ADU with all permit costs, all building costs, everything, with us doing basically all the finish work on the building, would have been $179,800 for a 550 square foot ADU. In Mexico, the final cost with all permits, fees, building, $63,232. So the cost in the US would have been well over double what it cost us in Mexico to build the exact same building. And I am very, very confident that that is a very, very low bid, especially for today. Maybe people can put in the comments if they've done anything like this similarly, but if you just have a piece of property and you want to put in a full 550 square foot ADU with everything that's required in California, all the permits and fees, could you do it for $180,000? I don't know, but I'm kind of skeptical that you could get that all done. So in summary, you can see that it's definitely way less expensive to build in Mexico. Now, I purposely did not talk about land in this. There is really no way to compare land between Mexico and the US because land can vary so much dependent on location, whether you're in Mexico or in the US. We have our lot here, which is worth $300,000 or $400,000. Move this lot 500 feet that way and it's worth $2.5 million. Because of the lot for sale for $2.5 million, it's actually smaller than our lot right across the street. Move this 1 acre lot 1 mile that way, and this lot probably costs $6,000. So, right here in Mexico, in our city, you could take the exact same area of property and have it cost anywhere from $2.5 million to $6,000, depending on where it is located. Same thing in the US. It's impossible to compare land, but you can compare building costs because that building costs the same. Whether you build it on the beach or you build it out in the desert, the building still costs the same. So I hope this answers your questions about building in Mexico versus the US. If you liked the video, please give it a like. Subscribe if you haven't so you don't miss any of our other videos. And never forget to live before you die.